Welcome, Elizabeth. Could you introduce yourself for the benefit of our audience today?
Thank you very much. My name is Elizabeth Horn Petersen, and I am the founder and the executive director of the South African Faith and Family Institute. Our office is based in Cape Town, but the work reaches, much further than just Cape Town, South Africa. Thank you.
Welcome to the show. And let me go to my second guest. He will introduce himself. Good day. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Rev Zaizai. It's Zukisa Fumba. I am the ordained minister in the Methodist Church of Southern Africa. I am currently stationed here in Highveld in the Swatini district, serving in Benoni Circuit, in the local congregation called Northfield Methodist Church. I've been here in Johannesburg for the past almost 2 years. I was serving before in Cape Town. And I am joining this podcast in my personal capacity as the minister here in the Methodist Church. I am the district gender desk convener here in my district here in Highveld in the Swatini. And I also voluntarily serve at the board of SAFFI, work with Elizabeth as one of the board members there in the board. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
This is a quite interesting global conversation. Two distinguished individuals joining me from Cape Town and Johannesburg. It has a considerable history when we talk about the issues surrounding social justice, oppression, affirming human dignity, both from a colonial standpoint, from an imperialistic standpoint. But we will get to navigate those threads as we go along. The South African Faith and Family Institute, Elizabeth, you've done considerable work in this particular area of social work. Let's begin as a preliminary question for the benefit of our listeners and our viewers. How did it all come about? SAFFI, as it has become to be known now. Take us back.
It's a very long story, which I obviously will not go into. Folk can actually check our website also to read up a little bit more and so forth. But, in short, to say that I think I've known for a very long time that I'm supposed to work with men who abuse their intimate partners and also with religious leaders from various faith traditions. And I think the whole area of working on the faith dimension, relationships and families also stem from, I guess, my growing up. I've never seen my dad use violence or abuse or shaming or any of that thing, that sort with children. And I'm one of 9 children. So growing up in a difficult circumstances, as most of you would know, in South Africa under apartheid, Black people going through all sorts of dehumanizing experiences. But in the midst of all of that, I've never seen my dad use violence or abuse. So it's interesting because, like I said, I guess probably from the time when I was a teenager, I had this clarity of vision that I'm supposed to work with men who abuse their partners and with religious leaders. And it was only much later when I obtained my social work degree and my first job that I actually landed in a shelter for abused women and children. And that's the oldest shelter in South Africa. It was started in 1904, St. Anne's Homes, which is based here in Cape Town. And I think there I've seen and witnessed how women flee for their lives, and many of these children don't even know what it is to witness a healthy man, because the women would come and they're either pregnant or they are women with young children. And I think that whole experience have really further refined for me the urgency of this work. Because the question that I always then lived with was, how do you get from a place of deep connection, loving, intimate relationship to a place where that relationship becomes such a toxic, violent, abusive space of terror and horror, and then I think also some of the other things that had happened. Another job that I had while I was working at St. Anne's, I was one of the first counselors for one of the first battered women counseling centers here in Cape Town. And I remember, one of the women that actually came into that center for counseling was a woman that went to the same church as I. And I know her and I know her husband because we grew up together in church. I mean, her husband, we're part of the youth. And I was hoping that she was basically lost and that she was just popping into the center to ask for directions. Because I did not want to know that, that there was any violence or abuse that she was experiencing. Only, of course, to discover that she actually did come to the center because she needed counseling. And there I had to sit, being the only counselor, I literally had to sit and listen to all the horrible things that my friend, who was a man of faith, have been doing to this woman. And but there's also countless stories afterwards, that I've had, close friends in the church, men who have been abusing their wives, some of them were faith leaders. Sometimes the church knew about them, but the church didn't know what, or kind of either tried to ignore the issue. And so, and only when there's, infidelity, only when he finally, it's discovered that he has an affair outside of the marriage, then almost permission is given for the woman to divorce him. And so there's that. But then on top of that, I think afterwards I've also realized that I probably need to do some research. So my master's research focused on challenges that clergy face in addressing domestic violence. And that research, amongst a whole range of other, sort of local and international research, informed the establishment of SAFFI. Yeah, so I think, like I said, there's a lot to be said about that, but it's a combination of those, what I've just shared.
Very, very inspiring story from those very early beginnings. And you were quite right on point to indicate some of the challenges that the church has faced in the midst of the abuses that take place. The church is a voice of conscience. Reverend Zooks,
Yes.
let me bring you into the picture. How did you come in contact with SAFFI, with Elizabeth, Dr. Petersen? And by the way, congratulations, Elizabeth. Elizabeth just received her PhD from the University of the Western Cape. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yes.
2 sleeps ago, I got it.
Okay, that's quite correct. Congratulations, Elizabeth. Yeah, Reverend Zooks. Let me bring you into the conversation. You are United Methodist pastor in South Africa. SAFFI is doing a considerable work of justice, not only in South Africa, in other parts of the world, Elizabeth will get to talk to us as we progress into this program. Some of the major engagements she's been involved with in terms of whether it's educational, pro-advocacy in different parts of the world. But bringing you into the picture, well, what gravitated you to SAFFI? And you as a Methodist pastor, those challenging conversations pastors must have with their congregants, with their followers, with their parishioners. Talk to us a little bit as we begin this very interesting and fascinating conversation about SAFFI, its work in South Africa and other parts of the world.
Thank you so much, Rev, for the opportunity. I am the minister in the Methodist Church of Southern Africa.
Okay.
Southern Africa.
Yeah.
Yes, not South Africa. South Africa being part of it as well. Okay. So in the whole southern region here in Africa. So that's our connection. So it's not only South Africa. I just wanted to highlight that.
Okay. Are you strategically with the church in the Swaziland region?
Yes, the church in Swaziland is part of our conference. The church in Mozambique is part of our conference. The church in Botswana is part of our conference. The church in Namibia is part of our conference, and the church in South Africa. So those are the countries that makes up our connection. So it's those countries around in the Southern Africa.
That's wonderful. And talk to us how you gravitated. We thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It is not too long ago, but it was in 2015 when myself and other Methodist ministers outside the bishop's office in Cape Town, that it was on a Saturday, and there were women ministers who gathered on that morning for a meeting. And I was still fresh from seminary then. I wanted to find out as to why are we not part of the conversation? And I was told that there is a conversation about women's issues. I'm not sure the echo, whether it's coming from me or where does it come from. There seemed to be an echo, but I can continue if it's not disturbing you.
No, not at all. Please do.
Oh, thank you so much. And so I was so inquisitive. I said, I'm the minister. I want to know what is going on. And little did I know that there was a transformative work that was taking place of gender. You know, it happened to be one of our ministers. It was all ladies gathered there. And my interest began from that Saturday after attending the meeting, or rather, while attending the meeting, and in several meetings afterwards, I was asked, Zooks, you are going to be our secretary, you're going to be our scribe. And it was a life-giving and refreshing moment for me to get to learn about gender dynamics and complexities and the difficulties about gender within the church specifically. And it was just a year before in the Methodist Church, we celebrated 40 years, only 40 years since women have been accepted into the order of presbyters and ordained. And so I think it was the following year whereby SAFFI was invited by our bishop then, Reverend Michelle Hanstott, in one of our synods, that I get to know about SAFFI. And I read about SAFFI, and there was two representatives that I got to know at a distance, Elizabeth, and back then she is currently a doctor as well, Megan Robertson. So I got to know about the work of SAFFI and the work that was very much at the level of people and dealing with clergy, religious leaders, empowering and strengthening religious leaders to deal with this kind of work that even here in church, we don't know how to do the ministry that are life-giving, specifically with focus on gender and all its complexities and harmfulness and how it can bring life to homes, households, as Elizabeth spoke about the intimate partner relationship, to actually make families flourish, out of doing this kind of work. And so later in the years, I got to know Elizabeth as I attended general meeting of SAFFI and the work of SAFFI. So the relationship began to a point that they risked so much to ask me to be one of the board members. And it's been quite a privilege for me, as a minister in the local congregation, having to work with organizations like SAFFI to empower myself, empowering the congregation to deal with gender matters, which are so complex. And I got to understand how much, as the church, we have contributed and in many instances continue to contribute in this, what I call the evilness towards humanity, which is gender violence in all levels of its shape. So that's how I got to know SAFFI. That's how I got to be part of the work of SAFFI. Even to date, I continue to offer myself, to offer my time to SAFFI's work and continue to learn from SAFFI. And even got to a position in the past, I'll say from 2019, I had the privilege from Cape Town to work with SAFFI, spoke with my bishop. The bishop was so excited with the work of SAFFI, and SAFFI has been part of the Methodist Church, at least in the 2 districts, from the Cape of Good Hope and even here in Highveld and Eswatini. SAFFI continues not only to work outside but inside the church practically, sharing some of their experiences when it comes to dealing with gender matters, to celebrate. I always say to celebrate the image of God. So at the center of SAFFI's work, as a public witness from my side, I find a clear proclamation of humanity as bearers of the image of God. And it is in the work of SAFFI that cross-pollinate with what I deem it as the work of the church, And I think, let me just stop there. That's how I got to know SAFFI in a very condensed way.
It's quite truth-telling and quite profound insight you've given to us, Reverend Zooks. Let me come back to you, Elizabeth. SAFFI and some of its beliefs, you genuinely believe that religious leaders and faith communities have that pivotal role to play in addressing violence against women. Talk to us in terms of your engagement with faith-based communities, the interfaith conversation around this particular aspect of human dignity. Men affirming men, and when you gave us that response, then I'll be able to make some follow-ups. I know you were recently in Liberia. We get to talk about that. But what is it like in South Africa, engaging all these sorts of different groups with different conceptualizations and ideologies and Let's talk about those teachings and how you get involved, bringing a pastor, an imam, and others who are within different aspects of the faith community, a rabbi coming together to have some of these conversations in the South African context for the benefit of our listeners.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Firstly, I want to say that Africans take God and evil in the world seriously. And religion and faith and culture and spirituality is an important part. In fact, that is who we are as, as African people. And so I think that is the first thing, that's sort of the point from which we move, the worldview, the understanding from which SAFFI moves. And we understand that in the history of colonialism and slavery and all of these things, especially the onslaught of Africa and African countries, many of our African countries and states post colonialism, or when they moved into independence, have often declared themselves to be secular states. We have that. Our understanding is that you cannot separate faith, spirituality, and religion from African people. That's African understanding. And so our beliefs become quite critical. What we believe about ourselves, what we believe about God, and what we believe God requires of us as individuals and in relation to one another becomes very, very critical. And so I guess when I started in the gender-based violence field at the beginning of the 1990s, I was quite surprised that in the domestic violence field, people did not want to speak about religion and faith, and people did not want to speak about men. So, I kind of thought that's quite odd. How do you address the root cause if you do not actually speak about the beliefs that informs, the behavior? And so I think it's important to start to just frame it from that context. Also, since in South Africa, at least, more than 90% of the population affiliates to religion, Christianity being one of the probably over 75% of the population affiliates to religion, to Christianity. And so we are living in a society that is completely, religion and faith is in fact the air that we breathe and culture. And so that's important to start from that point. And of course, the fact that that issues of faith has been almost demonized, or people in the gender-based violence sector never wanted to address faith issues. Or when they did address faith issues, it was always talking about it in the problematic sense. Faith and religion and culture, the starting point is always, or most often, culture and religion as harmful. And so what SAFFI believes is that the minute you start, the tone on which you start the conversation determines whether you are opening up the conversation or whether you are closing down and silence people. And so, of course, when you speak about religion and culture, starting the conversation from it being problematic, we believe that you are silencing countless women and families who may be afflicted by gender-based violence, by intimate partner abuse, especially because of our context. And so I think the research that we have done also both locally and internationally confirmed that religious leaders are not necessarily being prepared by their theological training or by the institutions when it comes to how to intervene in situations where there is intimate partner abuse and domestic violence. And so, of course, you can see then for SAFFI, it becomes important. We amplify faith and culture as resources, and then we create spaces of safety for faith leaders to engage. So with regards to the work with other faiths, it's, or with, you know, the various faith traditions, we've I think our board, for example, we have a board that we try to be intentional, you know, to get people, qualified people in various fields from different religions. So SAFFI's board, for example, consists of people from different religions. Then also what we've established in 2014, what we call a theological advisory council on gender-based violence. And that is a council that has, and again, the intention is to have at least a woman and a man scholar, like scholars or theologians from different religions that, you know, that serves, or that comes together on that council. And what we've done so far is to get them to write, and we've got 2 publications, you know, where we get these theologians and scholars from these different religions to actually write about certain topics. So we have 2 publications. The one is on the root causes of men's violence against women, and we ask them to write from their tradition, their faiths, what are some of the easily misinterpreted scriptures and teachings that reinforces, you know, these abusive men being abusive towards women, but also what are the resources that is just not tapped into from the scripture. And a second publication that we asked them to contribute to was, what are the resources that we get from ancient teachings and from religion when it comes to interventions with men who abuse their intimate partners. So really getting them to think about and write from their scriptures, what are the resources?